In this video, I'm going to give you some resources for finding chord progressions that you can use for your songs and also for creating melodies. The first page I'll show you is the pop chord progression on Wikipedia. This just shows you the chord progressions that I was showing you earlier with the 1-5-6-4 progression and how it starts in just all the different places. And you can see that they have it written out as Roman numerals. And you can read a little bit more about this if you'd like, but this is really just to show you where this comes from. And also to point out the 6-4-1-5 progression that was dubbed the sensitive female chord progression by the Boston Globe. And if we go over to this tab, you'll see that we have the 6-4-1-5 sensitive female chord progression website or webpage. But the cool thing about this is you can scroll through this list. So they have a list of every song that's used this chord progression. And then you can even go and you can probably Google search, and some of them have links to them. You can just find these songs that have used this chord progression, and you can hear the different ways that it's been used over the decades that it's been in use. You might even find a song that you particularly are a fan of, and now you can understand what it is about that song that you really liked. So again, you can just make use of this to go through and find a song that you're particularly a fan of and go listen to it and see how they use the different chord progressions. Or you can just go through all these songs or a bunch of them and see the different ways that this one chord progression has been used and get some ideas on how you can use it, or maybe how you can use chord progressions from other people's songs in a similar way. Then we have this site that I came across, and there are a lot of common chord progressions in here. But the thing to make note of is that you can just take these chord progressions and try them out for yourself, because now all you need is to just pick a scale and then apply this particular chord progression. So for example, they use the 1-4-5 progression, and they're using C, F, G. Now this just refers to C major, F major, and G major. And if we go to our C and we use the major pattern, we can play a C. We go to F, we use the major pattern, and then we go to G and we play the major pattern again. So that's the chord progression. So now we could just change the scale. We can go to, let's say, A major. We can go to a 1, 4, and 5 in the A major scale. So the A major scale, and then we go 1, then we go to the 4th, so that's the 4th note, and then we go to the 5th. So we do a 1, 4, 5. So it's really easy to make use of these once you understand the scales and how to apply these, or just by using the shapes and patterns that I showed you. The other thing is to know what you're looking at when it comes to these other things where you have a 5/7. So for example, they have a G7, which is just a G major. And then if we use the major pattern, and then all we have to do is add a 7th to that. And when it comes to major chords, adding 7ths and 9ths are really easy. The pattern is the same. So for a major chord, the pattern's pretty simple for adding 7ths and 9ths. If we start with the C major, like we did before, and we add the 3 and the 5, you'll see that we have 3 notes between the 1st and the 3rd, and 2 notes between the 3rd and the 5th. And then it's the same thing, we just repeat the 3 and the 2. So we just go 3 notes between the 5th and the 7th, and 2 notes between the 7th and the 9th. So now we have a C major with a 7th and a 9th. So you can play a C major with a 7th, or you can play a C major with a 9th, or you can play the C major with the 7th and the 9th. And that same pattern applies to any note on the keyboard. So that's how you can start to make use of these chord progressions and understanding what it is that you're looking at when you see these things like these numbers in addition to these Roman numerals. And you don't have to worry too much about the music jargon. One other thing that I'll point out is that sometimes you'll see lowercase Roman numerals, and you'll see this lowercase m next to something. So if you see a lowercase Roman numeral, that just usually means that it's a minor chord, so you would apply the minor pattern using that chord. So for an A, you would play an A minor chord pattern where you see this lowercase m. And if you picked a scale, you would just simply play the first, the fifth, the sixth, and the fourth chord progression. And the first would be a major chord, the fifth note would be a major chord, the sixth note would be a minor chord, and the fourth note would be a major chord. That's all these Roman numerals are telling you. And again, if you look at this one, you'll have the first note, which will be a major chord, the second note in the scale, which would be a minor chord pattern, the fourth note in that scale, which would be a major chord pattern, and the fifth note in that scale, which would be another major chord pattern. And that just shows up down here in the example too. So you have a C major, a D minor, an F major, and a G major. All right, not to beat a dead horse, but I have another tab here where you can see that they have 10 most used chord progressions in pop and rock. And this is just to simply show you some other chord progressions and how they were used by different bands. You can look down here a little bit further and you'll see Sweet Home Alabama. They have a chord progression for that, which was used in Sweet Child of Mine as well. There's also Don't Stop Believing. They have a chord progression for that. Now, even whether you're into pop rock or not, it doesn't matter. It's really just taking a look at these chord progressions and how they were used, and then you can make use of them by picking out a scale and then just applying this chord progression and adding your own flavor to it. Now let's move into the electronic music scene. And if you're producing using a DAW, you're probably familiar with sites like Beatport or even TrackSource, or there's many others out there. But these are the main ones, and I wanted to show you these because if you're frequenting sites like these, then you're probably familiar with the layout, and you'll even notice that they show you the key of the song. So you can see here that for this particular song, the very first one, they have a D minor, that this song is in D minor. And then the next one's A minor, C sharp minor, A minor. And so by knowing the key of the song, even if you don't know what chords they're using, you can at least start to pick out what notes they're using, maybe say for their bass lines or maybe for their top line melody. And it makes a big difference when you can start to eliminate all the notes that you know are not in there by knowing what the scale is. And I'll also be including inside of the resources section a zip file that contains MIDI files that have every single scale possible that you could play on the keyboard. So all you have to do is take that MIDI clip into your session and it'll have all of the notes contained in that specific scale. So let's say you had a D minor. What I'll do is I'll jump over to my DAW and I'll go into my browser folder, and then I have the scale MIDI clips here. So then all I do is I jump into my minor scales and I scroll down till I have a D minor scale and I drag that into my session, and you'll see that I have all the notes for the D minor scale already in there. And in Ableton, all I have to do is hit fold, and now all the notes inside of this grid are going to be in the D minor scale. So that's a really quick and easy way to make use of this information that you have over here inside of the Beatport and sites like this. So then you have TrackSource, and it's the same thing. If you click on, let's say, Top 100, you can go into all these different songs, and they don't show you the key of the song here, but if you play the song, you'll see that they have the information right up here. So this song is in C minor. So all you have to do is go to your keyboard or pull out one of those MIDI files and plug in C minor, and then you have the C minor scale, and you can start to figure out what notes they're using for this particular song. Now I'll actually put this to the test for you, and we're going to play this second track here. So I'll just hit play on it so you can hear it. And it's just, they took a sample of Bill Withers, Who Is He?, which is an amazing song, by the way. And we can see that it's in G sharp minor. So if we go to our keyboard, we can start with our G sharp, which is the middle black key, because this is G, and we have G sharp. And then we do our minor scale pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, starting from G sharp, which is... So now if we know that those are the only notes that he's using for this song, we can play this back and start to pick out what are some of the notes that they're using for this. So you can see that all of those notes are inside of the G sharp minor scale. And if we just play, that gives us the melody of this song that they're using. And then they just added a bass line underneath of that in maybe a lower octave. So then you have this note pattern that you can start to use. And then you can start to maybe build your own song out of that, or take that and change it to a different scale. So if you know that they're playing the third, the fourth, the 1, and the 7th, so that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're playing the 1, the 3, the 4, and the 7. And then you can change the order of those notes and start to play them in a different scale, just using those same notes. And that's what you would call transposing the key of the song.